So nation state, yes, what is nation state? It's part of society. Society 11th NCRT, I think it's there. So what is a nation state? What is a nation? Perfect. Yes, yes. What is a state? Yes, and what it should have? Territory. Territory population. So such, correct. So such questions which are way too generic. They're very generic question. Nation state. He has not told what is the relevance of nation state. He has not told what is nation state. So be safe here. Define the words. What is nation? So what you told is right. And give example. Example for a nation is a German nation, Italian nation, not Italy. Maybe before formation of Italy, there was an Italian nation where people of Italy, before Italian language, or best is it a nation example, Kurd. Kurdistan we can say, Kurds. They spread over Iraq, Iran, Turkey. That's a nation. But they don't have a state. Next concept of state. State, what you told is they should have a territory, etc. And there should be monopoly of power. Only the state should have the power to show, state should have the authority to show power. So that's nation, next is state. Next idea of nation state. What is a nation state? What is a nation state? The boundaries of a nation coincide with that of the territories of the state. So it coincides. Example for nation state. Huh? Israel is a good example for nation state. Better example is again Japan. Because what in Israel what happens is they consider even Jews staying outside Israel as part of Israeli nation. So any Israeli staying in US, they consider him part of the nation. So Japan is a good example of nation state. So this will say finish maybe 1.25 pages of your answer. Definition of nation, definition of state, definition of nation state. Now what will you do for the remaining 0.75 of the pages? You have to fill in something. So relevance of nation state you write. The idea of protectionism you write. The issue of ill treatment of maybe minorities you can write. So this will add a good conclusion. And relevance of nation state in present context. India is not called a nation state. What is India called? What is India called? India is not a nation state. Someone told that. No. Yeah. India is a subcontinent. India is a state nation. Again, it's in NCRT. So generally what happens is first nation is formed, then a state is formed. But in India it's ulta. First a state was formed, then all of us we realized our culture is not Hindu culture, Muslim culture, Christian culture, our culture is composite culture. Then we became a nation. So India is called a state nation. That if you want to add, you can just add. So relevance of the present context you write. So what is nation, what is state, what is nation state? 1.25 pages over. Remaining importance of nation state, issues with concept of nation state. Presently, is there nation state because there's a lot of immigration going on, emigration going on. There is no nation state perfectly presently. At the end, talk about India. Talk about culture. I think this should solve the whole this thing. So these questions, see, I will tell you in GS also, out of context. There are a number of bouncer questions which come sometimes. Sometimes suddenly, last year there was a question. We have to conserve our art and culture, something like that. Art and architecture. First question of GS. Production of Indian art and architecture. When such questions come, we get afraid. But actually we should be happy because these are the places where you can score extra. These are the places where you have to show creativity. These are the places where you have to bring in some structure in answers, which we should realize everyone else who is sitting beside me, who is sitting maybe in other parts, in other examination halls, they are getting afraid, and this is a place where you have to score. And is here you have to show your creativity, even in nation state and all these areas. No one will write relevance of nation state, no one will write the need for nation state, no one will write the issue of minorities in nation state. So here, such places you underline, write 2 points only. And that person who is evaluating will be happy. Oh, he has looked at different dimensions. Anthropology, I've written 4 anthro this thing. They like linkages. They like linking one area to another. So they say link to paper 1 and all. Sometimes, okay, good. But we are not studied anthropology. So if you want to link it to such things. Importance of nation state, minorities, etc. When you link like this, they'll be happy. Maybe half mark you can get. So I think the structure is clear. Nation, state, nation state. Then analysis of nation state. Need, minorities, and India. I think that's it. I think Impact of Christianity on tribes. Anyone wants to say something? Add? Start. Anyone wants to talk about impact of Christianity on Indian tribes? Yeah, tell me. Mhm, mhm. Okay, correct. Anyone wants to add? Any see, Anthro at the end, there's a distinction between mains and interview, and the distinction is simple. In mains, we should say he said this, he said this, she said this. In interview, we should say I say it, I say it. So mains, you should always quote people. The more proper nouns you give, the better. Proper nouns are names, facts, books. So any thinkers here? No, what did he say? How will you structure this answer? What introduction can you give me? No, introduction I'm saying. What is the introduction for impact of Christianity on Indian tribes? Correct. Mhm. Then, yes, yes, correct. Perfect. So talk about impact. Perfect. Yeah, that was it. So you can say entry of who is it? Entry of Europeans into this thing. 1830 Act. Yes. So entry of Europeans. This actually that's a good point. So entry of Europeans. You start with that. Then it was LP Vidyarthi. So you entry of Europeans, right? Then you next LP Vidyarthi stated that the impact can be studied in two ways. One is evangelism, second is social welfare. So maybe make some subheadings. Social welfare, right? So who were the first people who came to India for evangelism? Not, I mean, not Portuguese. For evangelism, the first people who came to Northeast were actually Protestants. So Lutherans they are called. So 1933, although they opened, 1945 they were the first people. Who was it? It was Father Gosner. So the Gosner first came, and 1948, I think, were first tribes who got converted were the first tribes who got converted. Anyone? Khasis. Khasis is the first tribes who got converted. In Khasis, in Northeast, Khasis. Then this we are talking about evangelism. Then LP Vidyarthi says one place. Sorry, it was M.L. Srinivas who says that one place that the the actually the missionaries wanted to convert the upper caste. Why did they go to tribals? Because the upper caste did not get converted. So they went to lower caste. Lower caste could not get converted. So they went to STs. So these arguments they like, evaluators. Some we are bringing some arguments, we are bringing some debates that they like. Then evangelism, what next can we talk about? Conversion. By conversion, what happened? Or evangelism, what else can we talk about? There are two most important people who led to evangelism. One is, of course, we know St. Francis Xavier. Second is Father Levins. So Father Levins, St. Francis Xavier, and Hamara, so Father Gosner, you remember. Then social aspects come. What will happen? Because of conversion, what will happen? Because of conversion, what will happen? One, there's something called Kuntakuti rights. Kuntakuti rights are land rights. Santals, they helped them get land rights. One. In Northeast, they set up something called Great Leper Asylum. So people who were suffering from leprosy, they got a place where they could this thing. Spectrum, if you have studied history, if a child is born and mother dies, they used to bury the child. Human sacrifice they used to give. Which is that tribe which used to do it? Spectrum only there. And there's a tribal rebellion because of that. Allah. No, no. Not Khasi or which is it? Khols, I think. Khol rebellion? Muria? Khol rebellion? No, but which tribe was it? I think it was mostly coals. So that you say. So first it was medical help they provided, created leper asylum, they gave him land rights. uh, then many of the tribes in central India, the social status increased because they started believing that they are following world religions. Next, Sahai. Sahai in the impact of which is that article. Sahai has made a lot of studies on the impact of Christianity on tribals. So you have to mention Sahai, Sahai. Christianity as an agency of tribal welfare. That's the article which is written. So what I did was, there is a book called Applied Anthropology by LP Vidyarthi. So I took the whole book and I made notes. So so when you make notes, the advantage is you can quote the article, Sahai in the article, Christianity as an agency of tribal welfare has told that uh, uh, Father Gosner was the first person who came. So you are actually mentioning Father Gosner who first came, but you are mentioning this. So you are quoting examples, you are quoting books, which actually adds value. So see to that you mention Sahai. Since social welfare, so evangelism is over, social welfare is over. Then I think Debar Commission mentions that it did a lot of good work, but at the same time there was a vertical division in Khasi tribes. So one tribe one tribe got Christianized, other tribe did not get Christianized. So that is one. Second is there a division because of Christian. These are negative effects of impact of Christianity. Division in the tribes. The socio-cultural practices got reduced. Patriarchy got introduced. So these are general things you write. But it is important for you to mention these things. Gandhiji at one place says, anyone knows the quotation which Gandhiji told about Christian missionaries? They should not lead to conversion. Something Gandhiji had told. Anyone here? So Gandhiji told rose, the fragrance, rose does not force its fragrance on others. People will smell its fragrance and they will come near the rose. So similarly, Christian missionaries should not force themselves on others. This is Gandhiji told. Many of the, according to M.N. Srinivas, upper caste Hindus saw Christian missionaries as a bait. You know what is a bait? To catch a fish, they put that hook. So these are the arguments. Whereas Christian missionaries, they thought it is a work of God, in inverted commas. They thought it as a work of God. So these are the various things you just write. So you start with Advent, you start about LP Vidyarthi argument, then you say social as well as evangelism. Then evangelism, how it started, Northeast it happened, mention St. Francis Xavier, then Levines, Father Gosner. Then talk about the social things, talk about land rights, Kuntakoti rights, health, coal rebellion. Then negative effects you write, then end with Gandhiji, M.N. Srinivas, etc. So this will give 2 pages. If you write these many thinkers and all, you'll get a lot of marks. At least out of 10, you'll get at least 6 marks. So wherever you can hit, so there are some balls, there are some deliveries which are like full toss. There you have to just hit. You should go full throttle. Then you'll be able to push this. Instead of 5, you can get 6 marks. Yes, how much ever possible, try to mention thinkers, quotations, books, etc. So first 5 questions over. So discuss the alternatives for shifting cultivators in the context of ecological cost and humanistic concerns. So anyone who wants to discuss the alternatives. You have written the test, right, all of you? So discuss the alternatives. Yes, anyone? Oh, howda? Okay, that's why they've asked this question. Okay. Okay, anyone? Yeah. How will you introduce the? It's a way of life. Yes. No, that's fine. But introduction, you cannot say it should be prohibited. It should not be. So define is what is shifting cultivation. So you define what is shifting cultivation and what are the different names for shifting cultivation. What are the different names for shifting cultivation? Kalu cultivation, Zoom cultivation. Then Baigas call it by some name. What is it called? Bringa, Podu. It's not there in NC, it is there in NCERT, Bringa Kodu and all those things. So mention these names. If a evaluator is from Odisha or Andhra Pradesh, he'll be happy. He knows this guy. So these names, Joom, as well as Kalu you mentioned. So it will take maybe half. Then what are the alternatives? Yes. So okay, your talk in general. See, when they talk about shifting cultivation, you have to at least mention 60% of the page should be about shifting cultivation. So you mentioned shifting cultivation. Then tell me, why is shifting cultivation considered negative, bad? They have told ecological cost and humanistic concerns. What are the negatives? Pollution, of course, yes. Huh? Soil erosion, yes. Denudation. Why is there is also an argument that shifting cultivation was not bad? Why? Or was not as bad as it is today? Why? Shifting cultivation cycles. What is shifting cultivation cycle? Yes. What was the What was the period before? What is the period now? How much? Earlier it was on 30 because I was somewhere in my notes at the time. Earlier it was 30 to 50 years. Now it has reduced to 3 to 5 years. So what happens when we don't give it to for regeneration? This land degradation, soil degradation happens, etc. Why has this happened? Why are cycles reduced? One, next. That's what, increasing population increase. One, next. Forest encroachment or national parks have come up, wildlife sanctuaries have come up, etc. So you introduce what is shifting cultivation, talk about cycles, issues with shifting cultivation in the present context. This will take maybe a page. Then what are the alternatives? No, what Niti Aayog report you have to. I have not read the Niti Aayog report. So no, because when such questions come, they expect us to talk about the Niti Aayog itself. Because I remember 3 years back, there was a question on uh, tribal development during 12th 5-year plan. And all of us are surprised. Why have they asked 12th 5-year plan, tribal development? Then when I came back 2 days later, I opened up the MOTA website. There was a PDF in the Ministry of Tribal Affairs website, tribal development in 12th 5-year plan. So any development which takes place in the government, they ask the same question. So this question, if they ask, they expect you to quote from Niti Aayog. Anyone has read Niti Aayog? Yes. Mm-hmm. So what are the alternatives it gives? Because the demand says alternatives. Demand is of course horticulture, agriculture, as well as terrace cultivation. You can write. Mm-hmm. Because I when I was preparing answer script for myself, I gave this for the same thing: horticulture, agriculture, traditional practices. Then you can bring in Narega. Narega is actually ST population more than general. ST people are scheduled tribes are using Narega more. I think if I don't know, maybe refer maybe the synopsis. I think that will help you out with this. Ecotourism, but I don't know. See, what I feel is they expect us to write quote. Uh, in applied anthropology, what I remember reading about shifting cultivation, I think it was LP Vidyarthi himself who studied Malay. So what he says is clear-cut identification of people who are doing shifting cultivation. So he divides people who do shifting cultivation to 3 types. One is who are actually involved in shifting cultivation, one who are in the areas of shifting cultivation but they're not doing shifting cultivation, they're doing other activities. Some people who are in the mixed. So you need to displace people who are only doing shifting cultivation to other areas. People who are in those areas, you don't have to shift. Something like that he had told, but huh? That's what this is a general answer. So I mean, if you can read this thing report, that will be well and good. I think. So next, examine the impact of urbanization and industrialization on tribal economy in India. Examine the impact of urbanization, industrialization on tribal economy in India. Anyone here? LP Vidyarthi study, yes. Maybe we can start with what Karl Marx told. So Karl Marx, that, and he says tribal doesn't get anything from the new world, and they have already lost the old world. Something like that he mentions. MNS also has told something about industrialization and modernization, where he says industrial urbanization. He says industrialization is much more, the impact of industrialization is much more than setting up of more industries, and the impact of urbanization is much more than many people staying in urban setup. So something more happens. So you can start with that, and as well as Karl Marx. So study of industrialization or urbanization, the impact on it, it is important that you mention LP Vidyarthi. There was one faculty, I have not attended his classes, but a student from that faculty, we were discussing, and he told me the same one thing, that if you do not get in paper, if you do not know any other thinker, mention LP Vidyarthi. Because he has done study in every possible area. So intelligently do it. Don't, positively he has done study in everything. He has gone to Andaman Islands, he has studied polities, tribal leadership, everything. So what are the areas where it has worked? So what I did was, for this, such areas, try to come up with acronyms. So I had a peace drum ಅಂತ ಒಂದು acronym ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದೆ. So peace drum. So what is P? P is political. So what are the changes because of industrialization, urbanization, because of impact on political? First is they started grouping together. You can mention, see, for such things you should give examples. So because of peace, political aspects, you can talk about, say, Chota Nagpur Unnati Samiti, pre-independence era, and Jaipal Singh. Politics of tribals, anything comes, you have to mention Jaipal Singh. He was also part of Constituent Assembly. He wanted autonomous rights to be given to 5th schedule also. So Jaipal Singh. So when you are talking about political, mention political rights. Because of urbanization, this thing. I is industrial isolation. What is industrial isolation? It was mentioned in Tribal Cultures of India, LP Vidyarthi. LP Vidyarthi, as mentioned in Tribal Cultures of India, says tribals suffer from industrial isolation. What is that? Industrial nomadism, sorry. Industrial nomadism. What is it? But where is nomadism here? No, they take up their jobs, they are pushed out. Something like that you can say. So the tribal environment changes when outsiders come. So that is isolation. For economic aspects, because of industrialization and this thing. What comes economic aspects? Give examples. There is monetization. Yes. You can also talk about they get jobs. Give some examples again. Give some examples. Cultural aspects. What cultural aspects changes take place? Kinship relations, yes. Nuclear families start coming up. Languages, this thing, they get destroyed. So similar this thing. What is the second? Ecological changes because of tribals. Environment, there is the issue. Again mention, see, any place, I think, wait, let me quote you some specific examples. So economic aspects, there is Sikaka report again, I'm referring. So Kamal Mishra study, indebtedness, 80, what he says, close to 84% of all the, so he says, Kamal Mishra says close to 82% of all the tribals are in debt. So you can mention because of industrialization, this has increased. Or you can mention about, so this will talk later, I think. So some examples. D is again development related problems. R is religious changes because of industrial urbanization. Displacement rehabilitation, use urbanism, consumerism you can mention. So like this you can mention 9 points and give examples. Pick up examples from Khaka report, National Tribal Policy, etc. And what do you mention at the end? What do you mention at the end? How can we avoid this problem? What is the solution to this? What is the solution to this? What will be a good conclusion for this? Examine the impact of urbanization, industrialization, tribal economy in India. What is a good conclusion? So introduction you mentioned about Karl Marx as well as Hamara this thing, maybe LP Vidyarthi. Then you mentioned this is the body of the answer. What is the conclusion? The recommendations are telling. This is fine. Recommendations. There should be one organization for rehabilitation and this thing, skill development, etc. You can also bring in, see, tribals when I'm talking, when you are writing answer, see to that at least in one answer you mention tribal punchil. One answer you should mention tribal punchil. Tribal should evolve along their own genius. There should not be over administration. The symbiotic relationship between forest and whether tribal should be recognized. So in such answers, see to you bring in some tribal should evolve along their own genius. We should see to it that they are not left aside. The dream of Jawaharlal Nehru should be kept. Something like that you mentioned. It looks good. So here such examples after the recommendations, last line mention punchil. Punchil will be a very good conclusion for this thing. So 2C, what is ethnicity? Discuss the concept of ethnic boundaries, throwing light on ethnic movements in India. So what is ethnicity? Okay, any other example? Any other definition of ethnicity? Please tell me. Okay, ethnicity, the definition of ethnicity is self-consciousness of a group of people who are related or who are united or closely related by shared identity, shared language. Group of people who are united or closely related and identified by same language or same identity. I remember this definition because it is by Barun Das or Suranjan Das. So when you are telling this, quote their names, Suranjan Das and Barun Das. It's again in brain tree material. So when you write like this, they'll feel, oh, he has written authoritative answers. So what is the difference between ethnicity and ethnic attributes?